The most basic contest structure that we can talk about is the cash game. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, a cash game, we're talking head-to-heads. We're talking 50-50s. We're talking double-ups. Generally, we're talking about a contest that's going to pay out roughly half of the field. Head-to-heads, obviously, one person wins, one person loses. 50-50 is what it sounds like. Double-ups are going to be a little bit less than 50-50 just because you need to create the double up nature of itself. So the people have to pay for the rakes somewhere. Cash games, very different set of strategies than for GPPs. I have our NBA boom bust tool pulled up on the screen because this is going to give me the most amount of information. When we're talking about cash games, what we're really talking about is high median projection lineups. We're not trying to get different. We're not trying to be unique. We're not looking for contrarianism in our cash game lineups. What we really want are the best plays as much as possible. This is a spot where you're kind of using ownership in a different way because you don't mind soaking up all of the ownership. In this case, we don't have any ownership projections just yet. This is the projections for opening night. But as I look at it, we can still talk about it. We can use the boom percentage as a bit of a proxy. What we want to do in a cash game is get every single good play that we can find and then slowly upgrade them if we have more salary to get more raw points. But median projections are fantastic. Let's say you're in a 100-person contest and it's a 50-50. So top 50, get money. Bottom 50, do not. There is no incentive to finishing first. There's no bonus amount of money that you get in a cash game for finishing at the top. You don't have to get all the way to the top. You just simply have to cross the midline. And that is an important thing to remember because the most likely way to do that is to use the plays that everybody else is using that grade out on a point per dollar basis as the best plays you can find. Nikola Jokic, for example, on this screen, we have him as the guy with the lowest bust percentage. We also have him as the guy most likely to succeed. When ownership comes out, assuming he is relatively highly owned, I'd expect Nikola Jokic to be a regular piece to a cash lineup. Similarly, maybe Steph Curry is the other pay up option that you can get to. 9,200, two separate positions, very high likely ownership because of the positionality. Because remember, with center, you're a little bit more limited, and that's for a different video altogether. When you start getting to the guards, highly owned guards and forwards are going to be in your optimal lineup. When you can get a guy to be highly owned, that usually just means that his projection relative to his salary is pretty high. You don't get a lot of poor point per dollar plays into cash lineups. So as I look at a cash game, if I'm trying to build the best lineup possible, I'm starting at the ownership list and I'm working my way down from top to bottom. Load in everybody. You can even do this in a reverse way and do it based on value, but I think starting from ownership will get you there. If you load in all of the best plays via ownership, you're probably pretty close to a cash game optimal lineup. You're probably pretty close to the optimal lineup based on the projections that we're using. When I say optimal lineup, I mean if you take every projection for every player and you want to maximize those fantasy points, the lineup that shows up first with the highest projection, that is the optimal lineup. You're going to get pretty close to that if you just use ownership. But any bit of salary that you have remaining, you want to use that to upgrade a player to a higher projection. Use as much salary as you possibly can. There's no bonus for leaving salary on the table. You don't care about dupes in this scenario. You're probably going to be duped with a bunch of people in the cash game if the contest is big enough. Load up on highly owned guys and high point per dollar guys. That will likely converge for you in your building of a cash lineup. But if we want to talk about contests, this gets even easier. If you're playing head-to-heads, be aware of any head-to-heads you're taking. You do want to try to avoid anybody with a badge, anybody with a name you recognize. Getting into head-to-heads in those scenarios are probably not going to be in your best interest unless you have the data over a long time that shows you beat this person. But for 50-50s, for double-ups, try your best to get into single entry contests. You don't want to allow other people to have more of the lineups in the contests. You don't want I don't want to say someone like me. I don't mean it like that. You don't want pros to be able to enter a double up or a 50-50 with 150 entries and increase their percentage of the pool. You want everybody to have one shot. You're going to get a lot softer competition when you can get into single entry type contests. So the biggest single entry 50-50s and double ups that you can find, they should be your priority, bar none. Then work your way back from there. If you're getting into like large field, multi-entry 50-50s and double ups, I think you should probably avoid them a little bit more. They're going to play out a little bit differently. So the focus for cash games, you're likely going to get all of the highest owned plays that you can find, or at the very least, very high point per dollar options until you can upgrade and spend all of your salary. When you take that lineup, you want to enter it into head-to-heads where you don't really know the name that you're looking at, or 50-50s and double ups where you can get into a single entry contest and have to compete only individually with others. After you get there, the less entries, the better for you personally. So if it's a 3 max 50-50 or double up, that's still going to be okay. Try to avoid the 150 max situations because you're going to be running into a different set of circumstances. This is what cash games look like nowadays. You're looking for optimal lineups. You're probably playing heavily owned lineups, and all you're trying to do is get across that midline. There is no incentive to finishing at the top.